So, something that's been stirring up in my spirit pretty heavy is I heard the word this morning, where was my church? Where was my church when fornication became okay in the church? People living together and fornication in the church. Where was the church when, or who was speaking up when adultery became a commonplace in the church? Now, we can't say that the pastors or leaders didn't know, because a lot of them do know, and they said nothing, and they allowed those people to remain within the congregation. There was no discipline brought to those areas. There was no discipline brought to areas of people smoking at church, people coming intoxicated to church, people doing things they shouldn't be doing, even though I am sure that the pastors knew about it. But now, when homosexuality has crept into the church, now it's a problem. But all that time before that happened, there was compromises happening a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And now we've lost all this ground because those other things were not dealt with. The women coming into the church dressed inappropriately, that was not dealt with. The women sitting in the front row trying to show off to the pastor while he's on the pulpit, that wasn't dealt with. The seduction in the church was not dealt with. The lust was not dealt with. So now we're at the stage of perversion and complete corruption because we didn't deal with those things beforehand. So my question is, what are you going to do now that perversion has come into the church? Are you going to sit on the sidelines and do nothing, say nothing, and legislate nothing and vote nothing? Or are you going to continue to allow the enemy to take ground in our churches, in our schools, and in your homes? But to be quite honest with you, it started in your home. It started in your home behind closed doors when you thought no one was looking. You were listening to that secular music. You were watching that secular TV. You were allowing the enemy to solicit you, like my husband talked about on a prior video. And you were opening that door to demonic solicitors. And now you're like, my home is overrun. Now my kids are not serving God. Now they're doing this and that. Why? Because you didn't deal with those other things. And you allowed the enemy to take ground. So how do we reverse that? It's time to take personal ground from the enemy in our own lives. Before we can do anything to make a turnabout in this nation, it has to happen with us on a personal level. If on a personal level, we're still allowing lust and perversion and the world to be part of our daily lives, and still go to church and act like we're all holy when actually we're not living like that. What we say to the world, how we can scream and get upset and make YouTube video after YouTube video about what this person is doing, what the other person is doing, it's not going to have any effect until we deal with the enemy on our own personal level, and then our homes, then the church. Then we can start doing something about what's going on around us. But I find it hypocritical on our part, the church's part. And this is maybe why the LGBTQ community sees our hypocrisy and says, well, they never did anything about the other things, and now they're making a big deal about the perversion that we're living in when they're still doing X, Y, and Z. See, and so In order for us to have an effective voice, we have to have a better witness. And the witness of the church thus far is that we don't look any different from them. And now it's gotten worse. Now we actually have the world behind our pulpits coming up with a different gospel, preaching a different gospel, perverting the truth. Why? Because like I said, we didn't do anything about it back then. We didn't do anything. The pastors were having affairs. They were doing this and that. Nothing was said and done. No big stink was made about it back then. I'm sorry to say those terms. But now we want to say something. We really have to pull it up, soldiers. We have to take a good look at why these things are happening. We all know why they are. Because we allowed the enemy back years ago and made small compromises along the way. And now we're here. And we can change this. But it's going to take prayer. It's going to take revival. It's going to take reformation. And I want you to be praying that all those things happen. Because if we don't do something now, we're literally going to plunge into the dark ages. We're literally going to be part of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then Jesus is going to come and we're going to be ashamed as the church. And I don't want to be ashamed of his coming. And I don't want to hear, never knew you, depart from me. I don't want to hear that. And I'm not going to hear that because I've made a choice to stand up for righteousness. And this is why I'm making this video. It's time to stand up for righteousness. The Bible says, as in the days of Noah, the last days will be as in the days of Noah. And Noah was a preacher of righteousness. So it's time to preach righteousness. It's time to live holy. And that's our personal choice. So thank you for watching.